Hi everyone. In this video, we'll take a closer look at your competency progress report. You can think of this like a skyline at the class level. So there's two ways you can access your competency progress report. The first is through the Performance Overview tab where I am now. You can access the report by clicking on the Student Progress header. We'll do that in 1 second. I just want to show you the second place where you can access the Competency Progress Report. That is on your Student Locator tab. You can use the drop-down menu, and it is the third option, Competency Progress Report. So if I come back to my Performance Overview tab, and I scroll down a bit, I'm going to click on the heading that says Student Progress, and that brings me to my Competency Progress Report. So again, this is essentially class progress by competency. It's set up very similar to your individual student skylines. So that means along the bottom you have the domains for your course. So this is a math course. The domains along the bottom are the math domains. If you teach science, you'll see science domains, ELA domains, etc. On this graph, the blue indicates that one or more of your students has interacted with a lesson on that competency. So if you remember from your student skyline graphs, each block or box represents one competency, typically one lesson learning standard. So blue indicates that at least one of your students in this class has attempted that lesson or attempted mastery on that competency. It does not indicate mastery, and it does not indicate lack of mastery. It just indicates interaction with that lesson. And gray indicates no interaction yet. So as the year goes on, and as your students interact with more and more lessons, more and more of this graph will appear in blue. So if we take a look at a couple of examples here, I can see that my grade 8 math students have worked on some of the higher level competencies in operations and algebraic thinking, so all of these ones in blue, some of the higher level competencies in number and operations in base 10, and then as we come along to those higher domains or more challenging domains like vectors, reasoning with equations, and trigonometric functions, my students have worked on fewer lessons. Now that makes sense to me. It's the beginning of the year. I expect a lot of the gap filling in my students' skylines and learning journeys to be in those lower, simpler domains. And as the year goes on, I anticipate that I'll see more and more of these more challenging domains turn blue as my students reach those lessons in their learning journeys. So you can just view this information at this level. It gives you domain level view of where your students are working as a whole. If you'd like more information, you can click on the specific domain. So let's say I have been working on the number system domain in class with my students, and I'd like to see from here which competencies my students have interacted with and which ones they have not. So I can click on the domain, and that sort of zooms in this graph so I can see the competencies closer up. So the first thing to notice here is that my competencies, which again is basically a learning standard, it's typically one lesson, they're grouped together by topics. So this single competency, 6NS1, stands alone. There are no other competencies in this domain that are very closely aligned or sequenced to this one. Then I've got the next three that are grouped together in a topic, and so on. So if I'm curious about a specific competency, like let's say I just taught in class 6NS4, finding the greatest common factor. I can find that here. Here's 6NS4. I can see it's blue, which tells me at least one student has interacted with this lesson. I'd like a little more information, so I'm going to click on this box or competency. And I can see along the right side of the screen who has actually interacted with this lesson and what score they got. So I can see I have a lot of struggle on this competency in this class. I see lots of red, I see some orange, and I've got two students that have mastered this. I've got Shawnee and Maria have mastered this particular competency. Monica's approaching mastery, but the rest of my class clearly is struggling hard with this information. So this might tell me, if I search for this specific competency, hey, I really need to readdress this tomorrow. Maybe I can set up some small groups with Shawnee and Maria leading them. Maybe I should do a warm-up specifically on finding the greatest common factor. it gives you that information that you can use to inform your instruction. You should note that the competency code and description are listed here in full, and you can also print and download this for your reference. So if you are going to a math department meeting or your content department meeting, and you're all going to compare how students are doing on particular standards, maybe they're high frequency standards for your state assessments, you can print this out so you can compare with other teachers. So I'm going to close out this domain by clicking this X, and that brings me back to my regular graph. Let's do one more example and see what we can find here. So I can see that my students have interacted with every single lesson in the ratios and proportional relationships domain. So I'm going to click on that domain. I can see it's grouped, those competencies are grouped into 4 topics. So let's take a look at this one here, 6RP2, understanding the concept of a unit rate. So again, if I just taught this in class or I just asked my students to specifically work on this, I can click. And I can see again who has worked on this lesson or competency, what the competency assesses, and what scores there are. So again, I can see I've got 3 students that very much understand this. Philip, Jose, and Jillian all got 100%. That's great. I can see Simon has mastered it. I've got a handful of students that are approaching mastery, like Rachel, Justin, and Shawnee are approaching mastery. And then I can see Claire and Thomas are struggling significantly with this. So again, this might inform my instruction. Maybe Claire and Thomas need some type of differentiated assignment to focus again or readdress concept of unit rate. So one other thing to notice here is on this particular example, I see this orange compass. Anytime you see this in Navigator, it means you can make a suggestion or suggested resources are available. So if I have my 2 students here, Thomas and Claire, they clearly need additional support. So maybe my first action as a teacher is to make a suggestion. So if I click on this compass, I can see that I'll be suggesting 6RP2 to Claire. So that's a signature collection, which means it's support resources. So if I click confirm, Claire will now have that suggestion appear as a notification on her page. She has the option to say no thank you, but in that case, the suggestion still stores and she can access it anytime. And I can do the same for Thomas. Confirm to make that suggestion. So that's my first action I've taken informed by these data. I've made a suggestion of support resources to my 2 students that were struggling. So if I close out here, we can talk about one other way you can use this particular report to find information that you can use to make decisions in class. So let's say, which is commonly the case, I don't remember the competency code of the standard I just taught. I have no idea if it was 6NS1 or 6NS6B. I have no idea. So if you remember the general topic, you can actually type that in here. So you can actually type in the competency code. So if you do remember 3MD1, you could type that in here, and then you can click on that 3rd grade measurement and data standard. I can also say I really don't remember what the standard number is, but I remember it was about fractions, so I can narrow it down to these domains. I remember it was fractions, and we talked about it in the number system domain. So I've got my list here. I can see it's applying and extending previous understandings of multiplication and division to divide fractions by fractions, or multiplying and dividing rational numbers. So let's say it's this one. I can click in, okay, that's the standard name, good to know. And I've only had 1 student work so far, so notice again, it is highlighted here, it's in blue, and that's just an indication of interaction. It's not a sign of mastery or lack of mastery. So I can see Dennis has worked on that particular lesson, scoring a 0%. So I'm going to take the same action here, click on this orange compass. Here is the suggested collection of resources. I'm going to confirm and make that suggestion to him. So that is my first step to inform my decisions and my instruction using this information. So to summarize, you can find this graph on your performance overview page by clicking on the student progress header, or on your student locator page using the drop-down menu, selecting the third option, Competency Progress Report.